Welcome, all you Contras, partisans, and lovers of anything to do with Brush Beater, Joe Dolio, K, Combat Studies, and all the other good classes that have been produced out there. We're coming back with a little bit of the Guerrilla's Guide to the Baofeng radio before we actually have another more specific medical topic. But I wanted to do it says page 54, but we're going to start on page 53. Because this is the section that's all about your everything from your medevac, your Angus reports, and stuff like that. And I wanted to have somebody in the medical field side who's dealt with this here, because I think there's nuances that we miss, and just going over some of the reports doesn't do them justice. And we'll probably get into more of this stuff because there's an Angus report, which is like an entry report when you get into an operation field. And we do this stuff in the Scout course, and we practice this stuff, but a lot of people don't think about it. And after talking to a historian about the NVIS class that's coming up and how that operationally, like things like this are important. Well, another important part is the 9-line, and I believe the medevac side of stuff may not. A lot of that's changed, and we'll probably get into a deep discussion on it here, a little bit here, and then we're going to have a deep discussion about the TCCC class that went down that happened now months ago. And I haven't had the ability to really sit down with Rabbit and have a deep discussion about this. So it'll probably rehash some cobwebs from him and get into the core of stuff, because he was working his butt off, and then I was working my butt off, and then we kept switching back and forth. And I really haven't sat down with him for months now. So if you want to say hello, Rabbit, by all means.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a while. It's been, like you said, work's been kind of dogging, but yeah, it's good to be back. And like you said, it's good to talk about this stuff all the time, because it is if you don't practice some of this stuff, most of this stuff, you'll lose it, especially the terminology and stuff like that. So it's good
I
to be
can't
back.
even remember a 9-line off the top of my head anymore, and I know that's like one of the things everybody writes down. So I can't tell you how many vehicles came in with a 9-line taped to their window for just the occurrence of IEDs and stuff like that in the global war
Oh
terror.
shoot, yeah, we had them. I
Everywhere.
had them on the helicopter. You have them all over the place
Notebooks
because
have them straight up and everything else.
exactly.
And the stress of doing all this stuff is extremely important, but there is a reason why I think Scout in this book has foundationally brought some of the military concepts to our forefront and has made them a universal standard, because most people don't really do a lot of deep dive into this stuff. So that's why it's in the book, and that's why we're going to start reading it. And I'm going to start about midway down on page 53, because we already went through the Che Guevara part, and as much as that is historically important, I don't really like talking about the guy, other than, unfortunately, he's a necessary evil in anything if you talk about guerrilla warfare. So we're going to start off. With that said, the treatment of battlefield casualties must be at the center of a guerrilla commander's planning should he wish to be successful in maintaining morale. Fighters have reason to believe in a cause, especially one in which they are fighting for justice and social change. When they see the efforts of a commander makes to recover and care for them under duress, thus the medevac becomes a vital role, and with it the medevac request. A proper medevac request is a handoff of information about a patient and the consideration for care being made both by the team providing the initial care under fire and responding unit conducting the medevac. For example, one of my first combat engagements in Iraq was initiated by a mass casualty event. The lead vehicle in a patrol hit a catastrophic IED, amputating both legs of the driver and the left leg of the front passenger, which we call the truck commander, TC. Both rear passengers were thrown. The doors and the gunner were ejected from the turret. All were severely wounded. My platoon leader coordinated the search effort for the missing gunner, while our medic, with the platoon's medic, treated the casualties in order of severity. My platoon sergeant was busy coordinating the medevac request over the radio. The medevac card we all carried with us was the one below. And there's an image of that right here. He goes into detail. It's in the spiral notebook, it's very small, but in the fold out or in the tabletop book, I call it, that you can buy off Amazon, it's fully blown up and you can read it. We located the gunner and successfully marked off the pickup site, getting all of our wounded off the battlefield and into the field hospital. While it was tragic, it's a reality of combat. Through using the report format above, my platoon sergeant relayed critical information on the nature of the injuries, what we had done for immediate care, and what special equipment would be required by the responding medevac team. Had we not done that, the 2 amputees would have certainly died along with one of the passengers who had suffered a spinal injury. The successful handoff of the information kept them alive. Not all medevac requests concern your own troops. Once, on my second deployment to Iraq, we were accompanied by the battalion surgeon to conduct a free medical clinic along with the civil affairs unit. 2 Iraqi men brought an old woman in obviously bad physical condition to us, and we immediately knew she was near death from the smell of gangrene. She had a botched knee surgery that was horribly infected and required amputation. We called in a surgical team since it was in question whether she was even stable for the flight. The amputation was performed there along with stabilizing care, and once her vitals were stable, she was transported by air to the field hospital. It is another gesture of goodwill that paid off for our operation in the area. The 2 men, grateful for her to be alive, provided us with valuable information against the Sunni insurgents in the area. Training the guerrilla force in medevac requests may seem mundane, but it must be stressed that its primary purpose of communication in all 3 categories, most importantly sustainment and tactical. Even if the injuries are not combat related, the ability to relay the nature of them and handing off the treatment plan should be a requirement of that training program. And I'm going to stop here before we read all this, because I think we've talked about this before, about how Ukraine's medical care is totally different than what we just read in the book. And
Yes.
it's going to be a different animal for us because things go haywire in this country alone. Medical care may not be easily accessible in the first place.
Yeah, and we're talking an immediate transitional change of theory and doctrine and everything else. And this is, I'm not going to say there's not really a reason to, I know some people, and we've actually dabbled with this as well, is changing and adapting the 9-line to a clandestine force instead of just a conventional force. And you end up keep going back to the same thing because just like he stated in the book, it's not just for your guys, and it works just the same. It's clear, concise, everybody knows what it is, and in reality, that's exactly what you need in those seconds. And exactly what he was talking about earlier about the platoon sergeant sending up the report, that's straight by the book. A lot of people were like, "Oh, hey, the medic does it." No, they don't. No, they don't. I'll tell you what needs to go in it, but it is a leader that sends that up, and 9 times out of 10, almost 10 times out of 10, that's going to be your platoon sergeant. And so I think a couple people are going, "Oh, hey, like they're going to know stuff, or if I'm tapped, they're going to hear this transmission." And I was like, "Yeah, but I know that argument has been going back and forth, but yeah, the 9-line is just a staple of the military, war, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's just kind of always been there. It works really well. It's clear, concise, it's quick. And for those who have used it, even more often than it used properly, you can get everything moving as fast as possible. Even if you do not have the air superiority that you may not have the air mobile assets. Nobody's got a helicopter in their back pocket. This is good. This is a medevac for anything. A truck, a gator, side-by-side, four-wheeler, whatever you have, you can use this and it's completely interchangeable. So
Yeah, and I think part of it too is talking about the clandestine side of things too. A lot of this comes up, like when we go through some of the other sections, it's definitely a clandestine report. It's something that even the submarines did in World War II in a fashion on all sides. This isn't a German thing, an American thing, a Japanese thing, or Italian thing. They had, hey, we're out in this position, we're doing stuff. But the medevac becomes the important stuff. And there are times that you may do a medevac that you can't, like, and I was going to have Rabbit read these out and go over it, but I'm just going to hit the first one. Line one is location of pickup site. Sometimes there's no good pickup site right now. And maybe you get the other information out to your higher up or your medevac team or your quick QRF just to say, hey, we've got this patient and stuff like that. And that's something to be discussed about and debated. I really think, like, if I was doing this, location of pickup would probably be the last thing I would do, but because once you start communicating this information, it might be 12 hours and they may have to shift positions or do something like that. And that's something they've shown in Ukraine over and over again.
Yeah. And it's so the purpose in its order, which kind of is where it gets messed up, and if you are trying to change it, and I probably should have brought this up earlier. So there's 9 lines to a 9-line medevac. Who knew? So the first 5 lines is what we would take at Aeromedical, and then we'd launch. We would not wait to hear lines 6 through 9. So you needed the first 5 lines to start the vehicle moving, and that's all that vehicle needed. And now that's what you were talking about. If you're sending this up and it's not practical, I believe, I'm just talking on my own soapbox about it. I would believe that the attempt would be made, and that's where you get into, and I know we're jumping around a little bit, but so line 6 is your security. So if you were to say, oh, hey, security, hey, we have X-ray, there's an active engagement going on. Okay, well, that kind of changes stuff up, especially for the clandestine, the guerrilla force. It's not really good for us to it's not like helicopter can come in, and you bounce. And even then, it became very hesitant. So, yeah, you might have to send an updated one, maybe with a new one, but at least just for folks to know, that's why it's in that order, is so those first 5 lines give you pretty much the where, what, and who of what you need, and you could start spinning the bird up. You could start spinning your QRF and your medevac vehicle. Get the engine running. Get your stuff. Make sure your
Your
stuff's
guys out
already
of bed.
in it. Yeah,
They're not.
exactly. Like, all right, hey man, like we're running out to doing whatever vehicle that we have, whatever.
Yep.
So,
And
but
guerrilla
yeah,
forces may not have that kind of assets, and it may be, hey, I've got some guys local, and we need to get somebody over there real quick, or maybe they have a. And this will go into some other points, but like one of the things that I'm very well trained in is having a fallback point that we would always go to. I think that comes up in a lot of the scout training stuff, like, hey, if things are rally point is what it's called. And I can't remember the specific name for the Air Force side of stuff because the aircraft have a specific name for a rally point as well. But it was if things happen, we're going to this point to consolidate. And that might be what your line 1 is in a austere condition environment. Like, again, Ukraine, right now they are sending a handful of troops, 2 or 3 troops across a conflict line that isn't even a line, and you'll see that in the map. There's a lot of gray, hazy area, and there might be a solid red area for the Russians or a solid blue area for the Ukrainians, but there's a lot of like shaded areas where no one has a solid answer of who's where because there's troops all over the place. Well, those troops who may be on the edge of that gray area may get injured and they may need to retreat, but there's still enemy behind there, and there's not a good casualty pickup point. But and again, maybe you give that location of a pickup point as a rally point that's already been pre-designated, and as like Rabbit said, correct that. Rabbit, how about you read the medevac and go down the line, and as you go, give us an explanation of each one and what it's for and what you feel people should know about.
yeah, sure. So starting off, so line 1 is going to be your location. Typically, that would be your 10-digit grid. But I can see this as, hey, if you work in a local area and it's this is definitive action, because remember that if this is all that gets out, this is the only information your medical team has. So if you go and you say, "Oh, hey, the oak around the corner," and your team actually knows where that might be, that might fit in this bill, especially if like if you're very frequent with the area. Hey, or a corner of the road, crossroads or something like that. I can see that being maybe injected, but obviously it's just location. Just, hey, this is where we're going to start. This is going to where we're going to see you. And then line 2 is going to be your call sign and your frequency. So this is going to be who's on the radio and what the frequency is that they're going to reach you at. So this would be like a transitional. This would be your team looking for, we'll just say, Voodoo as your call sign, and your frequency is, what is it, 125, or excuse me, I was aviation.
I was thinking the same thing.
I was like, oh yeah, that's not gonna work.
ELT.
Whatever. Yes, exactly. So you just do like 145,
yeah.
whatever, and that's where the medevac team is going to come look for you. So so ultimately, this is going to be a piece of paper. Typically, it would be something like that. Big military is a little different, but for the most part, this is being handed off. So what's going to happen is you got the crew, which usually is at least 2 guys, and even if that is a drivable vehicle, because a lot of people think, oh, hey, it's a helicopter. I can almost guarantee like 10 times out of 10 in this situation, it's not going to be a helicopter.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm thinking a Toyota Hilux in my dreams, but it would be a Tacoma or something like that. And you got the 2 guys, and you got your driver, and all he's doing, he's driving to the location. That's what he's focused on. Your TC or your truck commander or your right seater, whatever you want to call them, they're loading this information into their radios and your radios while you're driving, because you're doing multiple things at the same time. Line 3 going to be your number of patients by precedence. So that kind of sounds kind of what ultimately that's number of patients divided into severity of injuries. And that's what it means. So it divides into 4 categories. Most who have been around mass casualties, it's the same thing. Urgent, priority, routine, and expected. Your highest, needing immediate surgery, is going to be urgent. Priority usually sits around 12 to 24 hours. Routine, usually those are your walking wounded, scrapes, bumps, scratches, lacerations that are non-life-threatening. Those guys, 9 times out of 10, are helping you treat other patients. And then you have expectant. So obviously those are going to be the ones that no matter what you do, they're probably just going to need end-of-life care and comfort. And obviously a medical class will dive you a little bit more deep into each one of those. But to read that...
Let's go over this a little bit. I want to dig a bit. Just for the fact, to be fair, I'm a big fan of The Fat Electrician. And one of my friends or somebody on X, probably a friend that I've met at G Camp, said, "You sound like The Fat Electrician." I'm like, oh, Lord. As much as that's a compliment, it's also a sin because I can't keep up with all his stuff.
Oh, man, yeah. And then he constantly popping off some
randoms. Yeah, he's been shooting up the commies quite a bit too on X. I think that's a pastime of his, which has been hilarious to say the least. But one of the things that he has brought up in going back into World War II is how many people have been on this casualty list and said, no, I'm going to stay here with my troops and deal with the repercussions. And this is something that it's hard to say because I know like the medics are like, hey, you've been shot, get the hell out of here. But that's also a nice thing to know is like, and we're not going to go into the super details, but like an urgent person, somebody with a head trauma who's unconscious, or maybe a major laceration or amputation and stuff like that. Priority, I'm not sure. What would you put as just a common injury that would be priority?
That would be like your any injury that would develop into something that'd be urgent. So I would actually consider, like, let's say the person's shot, but they're conscious, but it's a chest injury. So right now he doesn't have cardiac tamponade. He doesn't have any of the, he's got damage to his lungs, but he's not exhibiting those late symptoms.
So he got shot through the lung. Somebody did the bandaging right, put a piece of plastic to allow the air to escape. he's there, he's conscious, it's hurting, but he's stable-ish. Is that
Yeah,
kind of what we're
yeah.
talking
And
about?
you expect as the medical provider that he's going to be okay for a little while. I don't know exactly how long, but this guy is going to die right now. And that's all what this has got like, and you'll see, even guerrilla medicine, you take any of his classes, which we highly recommend, you'll learn that it's all about buying time. So if this guy can stand a couple hours of being in pain and being in discomfort, but he's not going to die, that's cool. That's awesome. Thank you. I need that time for somebody else who, going
Is
back,
on the
let's say
urgent
going
list.
perfect. So like, yeah, exactly. Going back to like Scout's story or the event that happened there, all three of those patients are extremely. You're talking about bilateral amputation. That's me. That's urgent surgical.
Major
Single
explosion.
single amputation. That's gonna. I would send him up as urgent. I'm trying to remember what. Once they found the gunner, I don't think I don't. I can't remember if
One of the
they.
guys I want to say who is unconscious or something like that as I'm looking through this.
Depending,
Or
the biggest thing with him was they didn't know where he was at.
yep.
Because that's what happens. That's 100% what happens. You got two guys. You're like, okay, cool. I'm working on these two guys. And he's like, what about that guy in the ditch over there? Well, what happened to that dude? You know, how did, or you're like, hey, he was right behind me and now he isn't. So that's where this becoming uniformly and easy to understand and posted. That's why it was posted all over the place because you needed to have a uniform way in that chaos while the medic's doing the best that they can and your other troops are doing the best that they can. Everyone's trying to do the best that they can. But if there is nobody rolling to you, you're doing those patients a disservice. And everybody at a minimum should at least know who to call, like at least know who 911 is in your situation.
Yeah.
And this is technically your 911 as a guerrilla force because there is no you are the ambulance. So even if you don't have a doctor, he definitely shouldn't be sitting on the side of the road. It's still better than not being on the side of the road bleeding out. So at least let's see if we can bring him somewhere else, even if you don't have a hospital or something.
Maybe you get the information to a vet that you know that is capable of supporting you, which is common practice these days.
Exactly,
In
yeah.
Syria and other places, maybe you don't go to the hospital because the enemy controls the hospital and you need to get them to somebody who has the medication, has the stuff. And the funny thing is too, is like a lot of people I know a lot of people who get nearly expired medication that is antibiotics and there other stuff like that stores up and is shelf stable for a little bit longer than what is recommended on the stuff. And there's a lot of topics on that. Joe Dolio brings that up in his book, I believe, in a couple different areas.
Oh, yep,
And
yep. And then
I think everybody has talked about that to an extent.
yes, yeah. So there is going to be somebody who's got something related to medicine, but it's still all you're looking for is a better than what you had.
Mhm.
So if it's raining, at least find a roof. At least you're looking for small victories when it comes to this, and you're trying to buy these patients as much time as possible. So getting them the care, this is part of care. This is what you'd consider tactical evacuation care. That's where it falls into if you're doing the TC3 thing. That's where this falls into. And the quicker that this information can be passed on to your new team or your team that might come out and get you, or at least alert those who you're going back home to that something happened. This is where we're at, and we're, ditching
Maybe
what we're
the vet
doing or
has a
whatever.
day job and you have
Yeah.
a guerrilla operation going on, and that veterinarian needs to be woken up, told what's going on, what to expect, and what to prepare for. Now, you may not get there in a lot of time. Maybe the only medevac you truly have is a four-wheel drive off-road truck with a flatbed, which isn't going to carry all these people. And this is kind of what I'm going to get back to down to the next part is the routine people and the expected people. Maybe with all
Yeah.
these numbers, you say, hey, we go out in a platoon force, we're doing an L-shaped ambush, but something goes wrong, or the enemy forces that we contact aren't as soft as we thought they were, and they rough us up pretty bad. Maybe grenades are shot, maybe RPGs, maybe Russian RPGs are being shot at a Ukrainian V-shaped ambush, which you can learn at the scout course, because I know everybody knows the L-shaped ambushes and the linear ambushes, but nobody talks about the V, the Z, the Ks. But
You're just hot for the V.
I love the V. It is terrifying and it needs to be skill based. And in fact, on X, somebody said that there's a good video or information about Ukrainians doing a V-shaped ambush, which if anyone has the link, send it to me on X, G
Yeah.
Logistician. I want to see it. I don't want to see it for the murder porn, but it's a fascinating thing to go through. Anyways, so
Oh, yeah,
getting
definitely.
back on topic.
Yeah. So,
Routine and expected. Let's discuss them
gotcha.
because routine's going to be the injuries it says non-life threatening. What do you consider like, say, grenade shrapnel that's not like deep? It's not bleeding, oozing bad, or what else would you consider?
So my rule that I usually used, so if you came up across, if this person's walking to you, they're probably routine. That's at least what I used as an off the cuff way of like, especially civilian side. That's what we would use is say, okay, you'd pull up to whatever the mascal was and you'd yell and you'd say, hey, everyone who can hear my voice, come to me. All right. So that you got all these wounded folks and they're holding their arm and they're walking to you. Okay. Well, if they can walk, that means that they're conscious. They understood your command. So neurologically, they're okay. They're able to walk. They might be holding on to their arm. It might be hanging on, even if it is pretty bad and they're not. Usually by the time that you would show up, those folks who had not been had emergency care or point of care, or excuse me, point of injury care might have passed on by that point, or they've now fallen into urgent or priority. But so those folks that usually end up coming up to you as the medical provider or the oncoming team or whatever, if they come and walk up to you, they're probably routine. Usually you can do them you pull all of those guys to the side and you have somebody just go and walk through all those guys real quick. And as they get cleared, they're not leaving. They're usually getting sent into, like, I'm going to grab them and I'm going to use them depending on what injuries they have, especially if oh, hey, I have an arm injury. Okay, if it's a scratch, let's say you're talking about like shrapnel it's superficial, not heavy penetration, or let's be honest, hey, you got a guy that's got a couple rounds that zip through his arm or zip through his leg. He's maybe hobbling, but he's in pain, but maybe the bleeding's controlled already by self-applicated tourniquet, or maybe it's not bleeding. Maybe he just happened to miss everything. And oh, hey, that's where the evaluation would come into. So yes, it's a very broad way that I would do the routine guys, but for the most part, if they're walking up to you, they're usually not wounded enough to warrant higher off the rip without further evaluation. It's not like these guys are going to get thrown away. Oh, hey, they're good to go. No, they're going to be evaluated as well, but the guy who's
You're checking
exsanguinated,
for extra holes and things that
yep,
they may not have seen, that they
yep,
walk up and they're fine. They think they're fine, but the adrenaline's rushing and they don't realize they've been shot through the chest or something worse. Because there's been
correct.
a lot of that in history and current warfare. Somebody damn near has their head carved off and they walk up and the helmet's on and nobody realizes they're walking and talking, but they might be DOA in the future just
Yeah.
because
And
there's
that's
a
why I'm
chunk of skull missing.
careful. Yeah, I want to be careful with how I
Routine.
say it because I would like to say that I can go, okay, hey, like without further evaluation, you look okay. Well,
Yep.
after further evaluation, you're not okay. And so most of the time, that's where you need to, again, start somewhere. So those who might walk up to you, or even your priority patients we just spoke of. So we have that patient that's got that chest injury and he's fine. He's not fine, but
He's
he's
walking
good
around.
and relatively.
Yeah.
He's pretty messed up. Maybe he can't walk. Maybe he can. Doesn't either way. He's going to need some pretty good surgical steel soon. Not
Yep.
immediate, but soon. Well, if he starts exhibiting those symptoms, start getting much worse exponentially, or you're like, oh wow, hey, he passed out. Oh wow, there's an injury I didn't see and blood everywhere. Or we're thinking maybe internal bleeding. Well, now he just elevated. Now that person's elevated to an urgent.
Yep.
And this is a semi-fluid thing, at least within the mass cal. For
And
this purpose,
you don't ever work up. You don't come in as an urgent and then go to priority and then you go to routine. It's usually you're flowing downward on that.
usually, and
Yeah.
there's a handful of things. There's procedure you do, a handful of medical procedures that are just real quick. Hey, you're checking the pulse, you're checking the breathing. You do okay, cool. Next,
Mhm.
now that's for mass cal. That's where this terminology came from. For this as the medevac request, don't sweat it. Don't go totally nuts because you're like, is he a priority? Is he a urgent? Man, just put him as an urgent. If you're concerned, I'd put him as an
Drop them
urgent.
down the list a little further.
Yeah,
Short of
shorty.
expected.
Yeah, because remember, different levels of urgent too,
Yeah.
but we don't get into that. Like
Yeah.
that's cool. Now you're getting into some niche stuff, and you're like,
You're
okay, well
getting into the
now
medical field of things, not
yeah, we're
the
getting into the weeds. That doesn't
yeah.
matter for this request. This
Yeah.
is just so you can get the person out of the dirt and into anywhere else that's better than the dirt.
Yeah, and
That's what you're trying to do.
that's the thing, the issue with the Russians. So I did some research, and not an in-depth one, and hopefully somebody comes up and has an answer to this. As a how to say this, not pro-Russian, very interested in Russian culture and history and stuff like that, especially in college. This is well before Ukraine war outbreak. And to be fair, interested in Ukrainian stuff, probably more so now than ever. Regardless of the politics, we don't get too deep into the weeds on that. I'm more pro Ukraine than I am Russian, but that's here nor there. I understand that both the Russians and the Ukrainians have worked most of their military the same way for eons because they were all one nation for a while and for a long time. In fact, if you go back in history, Ukraine spawned modern day Russia from the northern part of Ukraine. And that gets into political weeds that we don't need to. But the fact is, the
Yeah.
military is very similar. And they don't really do medic stuff like we do. They don't have an embedded platoon medics. They don't have the things we do. And they don't have the care facilities we do. So a lot of this goes out the window. And you got to remember this when we're doing all this stuff. This is very American centric concepts that you don't see.
Yeah, this is all
Especially,
very Western.
yeah.
Because of the fact of what we've learned through these last conflicts we were in. And those last conflicts were insurgency conflicts, not peer on peer, which obviously is the big thing, and everyone's talking about it now. And even I've spoken of SOMA, the Special Operations Medical Association, and their conference that happens every year. They're talking about it in depth. That's like the big hot topic now is they've brought over a bunch of surgeons from Ukraine, medics from Ukraine, soldiers, and they've all told their stories on what's going on there. And that's where we learned, oh, hey, yeah, you're going to sit in the dirt for 4 days or more, bleeding, not being cared for. Because this is, again, I might be wrong, but I'd risk it to say this is probably the first time they've ever injected and or experimented with Western unit development or Western unit or doctrine. Because now, yeah, the Ukrainians, yeah, they are putting guys out there. They're not just litter bearers anymore. They are trying to implement more medical folks up at the front, but they're still, like you said, still not fully getting it because, like, the eastern side, they don't have
It's
any.
hard to do all that stuff and train those people up during a conflict and get
Yes.
everybody out.
Yeah.
And to be fair, doing research, and this may be off a little bit, but from what I can tell, there's no concept of a 9-line medevac in World War II. And I'm curious, maybe we'll do some research and have a topic of conversation with that with maybe you and Teddy as well. I don't think this existed even during Korea, and I think probably Vietnam, especially when the helicopters started coming around, that was probably when this was most focused. They said that NATO was the original developer of the 9-line specifically, and I'm very interested in to see how that goes. But just back on the topic of all this stuff too, he brought that up because there is a differential on that alone in the medical field, and they go into some details on the urgents, and I think priorities are split up or segmented as well. But for the common guy, the common prepper guy, the guerrilla warfare guy stuck in Syria, Ukraine, God forbid, Africa part or South Africa, this is a deep dive you don't need to know, but you need to understand the basics. So if I'm driving up with a pickup truck and I have 2 urgents, 1 priority, and a bunch of routines that we can come back later for and some expecteds that we can come back for later, maybe the routines are hanging out with the expecteds. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's something else, but maybe you have to do a couple trips.
Yeah, and that's common.
That's where it's important.
Yeah, you gotta be. That's why this information gets put out. So the rule, I don't want to say rule, but typically you get the first 5 out. So you're supposed to get the first 5 out within the first 30-second transmission. Is that's what you're looking for. So if you don't have the whole entire thing, which, yeah, no, we'll keep going down it, but it just allows you to get a little bit of semblance. So I can at least say, oh, hey, I'm pulling up my pickup truck. I can take 3. Okay, well, I'm going to take your 2 urgents and I'm going to take your delayed. The other guys are going to stay there and I'll come back when I can.
Or they're going to self-extract with their buddies, one of the two.
Yeah.
So
again, this isn't...
And I want to continue down to line 4 because special equipment required is one of those things like, as a Joe non-medic, and yes, I'm around you guys and I talk to you guys enough that I probably have a good idea of a lot of this stuff and I've been around the medical field enough to know that. But what would you see in the guerrilla warfare side, and then what did you see as special equipment in the military side?
So typically for special equipment required, it's usually had 4 things that was attached to it. And that was none, a hoist, extrication equipment, and a ventilator. Those were the 4 that they were the staple that were attached. Like when you look at this card that he has printed up there, it's just what was there. Some people might change. I've never seen it changed, obviously, for conventional warfare. In the military, that's what you had. Now, I have heard of people asking just in plain text, be like, hey, can I have ultrasound? Like,
okay,
can you, or can I
or
have
you'll need
something
ultrasound
else?
or
Or,
something.
hey, or say, hey, bring blood. Or bring something that, give me one thing that you definitely need to have.
Gotcha.
Some people will ask for a resupply. So that is where, I know we've talked about this before. We were talking about speedballs.
Yep.
You can have
Medical
that and be like, yeah, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to toss out a bag of junk to your medic to replenish all the stuff they just used.
Yep.
And granted, do they know what's in the bag? No, but I'm going to give you as much as I possibly can with the education I have, which a wet rock, but we'll at least give you something. And even then, it doesn't need to be asked for. Most of the time, just say none. And obviously, a hoist, that requires a helicopter. You need to have a helicopter to have a hoist.
Stuff. If you have a flipped vehicle, that's actually an important thing. Maybe you need something that is not a regular item, but...
Correct. Yep. And let's say, oh, hey, like, you have friends with the fire department. You got the extrication equipment off the truck. Who say that you can't put it in the back of your truck and bring it with you? Now, granted, you are running into some weird circumstances, but this is going to be a weird circumstance. So think outside the box.
Maybe you need a chainsaw. Maybe you didn't get to the fight and you flipped a truck and somebody's pinned between a tree and the truck.
Yeah. So now you're looking for, and those are things you can ask for. And just ask for them. Hey, line 4, I need a chainsaw.
Yep.
Okay.
Straps, chainsaw, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's why, and I like how he got rid of that stuff, because it isn't really the hoist, and that may not be applicable. But
you're going to have a helicopter hoist around in some of these areas is ridiculous. But I get it. This book is not specifically built just for, oh, we're going to war, America. It's the Syrian war. It's the South African wars. It's the Ukrainian wars. It's all the other stuff. This book is not... This is why I love this book so much, because it's a radio book, but it's also an education on guerrilla warfare, conflict, and a whole bunch of other stuff that people don't get the nuance in, because they buy the book to learn about the Baofeng radio. And I have touched on the Baofeng in here, but the reality is the rest of this book is not anything about the Baofeng radio at all. It could be an icon, it
No.
could be a satcom for back in for actual military conflict, and that's what we're doing right now. So, and let's go
Yeah,
off that
exactly.
one because I
Yeah,
think we've
so
pinned down. Hey, we've got certain things that the military looked at, but maybe you as a guerrilla warfare guy need something stupid.
yeah. So so can you keep that pretty plain and easy? Just talking in plain text. It just doesn't, and I say that specifically because I should have premised this before we started. Most of these have a, like for line 3, you have an Alpha Bravo Charlie. One of those correspond to your urgent priority or routine. You may not need to do that. Like I'm used to be like, oh hey, I got 2 Alpha, 1 Bravo, 3 Charlie.
Yep.
Okay, well, I got a lot of patients, but 3 of them are routine. And I imagine most people would do something like that because it's easy. It comes off the tongue really quick. And remember, even though I haven't gone, we're still getting through it. These first 5 lines, which we'll get onto the next, that's what I need to leave my bag and go. So line
How
5.
many people do you have? Yep.
Yeah, line 5 is just the total number of patients in total. So, and those are divided into 2 categories, litter and ambulatory. Ambulatory means able to walk under their own power. Well, maybe not. If they're taking a little bit of help, I would consider that ambulatory. If they're riding on the shoulder of somebody.
They can walk around on their own, stumbling
Yeah,
around, maybe
they're
a
at least
hand,
giving
or they
they
can
have
walk down a
effort.
wall of a house themselves.
Usually, if they can't do it by themselves, I would consider them. But for all intents and purposes, if they're laying on the ground and they need a litter, they're litter.
Yep.
If they're walking or they're allowed and they just need a little bit of assistance, ambulatory. And that's just a total. So
And
taking like what we did on this last one, I did, what did I say? I said 2 urgent, 1 priority, and 3.
Yep.
So I would probably do 5 are litter patients. Oh, excuse me. 4 are litter
3.
patients
4.
and 3 are going to be ambulatory.
Yep.
That would be how that would be going. Now at that point, so we got line 1, location. Line 2, call sign and frequency. Line 3, number of patients by precedence or urgency. Line 4, special equipment. And line 5. Now that I received all those 5, now I'm working. You will 9 times out of 10 send these next lines while I'm en route. Like I will tune into your radio and say, hey, a couple minutes out, continue on, or send me the rest of your 9 line. If I didn't get to, if you didn't have it fully prepared when I took the initial operation. So line 6 is going to be security of the pickup site. What am I driving into? Again, we got brevity codes. Yeah. So November is no enemies. Papa is possible enemy. Echo is enemy presence. And X-ray is active engagement and armed escort required. So most of the time, if you are like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be possible enemy.
Yep.
Because you don't know. Unless you're stateside and like right now, I don't even know.
Everything's, yeah.
And I'd actually like to say, like, if I was evacuating somebody in the middle of Philly, do I say no enemy troops? I don't know. Anyway, so, but yeah, again, so you have...
Chicago's always enemy presence.
Yeah, you could just be, it's there. And all that's doing is just prepping the pilot, the driver, the crew that's coming on. Okay, this is what we're walking into. So we expect if we get lit up, we're going to make the conscious decision as an evac crew that we're going to either continue on and die to get these people, or we're going to turn around and we're going to try something else, which it's always better for the medevac team not to get schwacked. So this information coming up as you're going is, you'll see. So that makes sense. So line 7 is going to be method of marking casualty collection point, CCP, or your pickup site. Alpha is panels, Bravo is pyro, Charlie is smoke, and then you follow on with a color. And then Delta is none and or other method. So Delta would be maybe you're doing an IR flash, or you're doing, maybe you're standing there waving.
Yeah.
Maybe you're
sticks on the ground.
Sticks.
Rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
The color, we've got a whole bunch of white rocks. We're putting a big circle on the ground.
make sure it's easy. So like
Yeah.
this is what's going to make me to stop. If I don't see this, just like and I just totally blanked out. Your when you're meeting up with a friendly team
Hmm.
for evac, you want to make sure that they clearly can identify this is where I'm supposed to be, because if not, I'm not stopping. Like I'm not
Or
going
you
to
think there
risk.
are hostile people in the area too, and that's one of the other things that comes up too. We're talking
Yeah.
about like, for instance, when we do pickups, austere pickup stuff like that, maybe it's a chem light on the ground on the tree or something like that. You're giving them directions. Maybe they have maps. Maybe they don't have good maps. Maybe there were hand drawn maps, and I have a whole book on that from World War II. And the internet's down, you've got a hand drawn map, you're at such and such location, we've got grid coordinates there, but a grid coordinate, even a 10-digit grid coordinates, as close as the person who is giving you that information thinks they are. So you might be driving down a road and not see a marker or not see what kind of representation that you're looking for. The panels, and I want to bring that up, the A for the panels, that is a colored panel, either pink or orange, that people will tie off to things, and that doesn't have to be
Typically,
laying
it's
on
a
the ground.
VS17 panel, is
Yeah,
what.
VS17, a lot of people cut them down into 3 chunks so you can hand them out, and you don't need a large one. It's very visible, but you can hang that from a tree or tie it off to a tree and be like, "Oh, they're there. They're right around here." And they may have a security forces in the woods protecting their casualties, and they may have had that VS17 pointed towards your direction of potential arrival, so you see it, but the enemy doesn't. So
Yep.
keep
Yes.
that in mind. And this is something that you war game well before. This is where training comes into play. This is where you go to scout courses, but you also may not come out and you're a non-permissive state or environment, but you might go out as a civilian group, do a hike, and do the casualty care process in a ad hoc way. But you think about, hey, if I need to get somebody off this trail, I've got guys meeting me. What am I going to use? Is it going to be a panel? Is it going to be an IR strobe? Is it going to be a real strobe? Is it going to be a chem light?
Yep.
So,
Yep. And remember, this is where you can like I would consider line 7 of marking and line 4, which is the special equipment required. I feel like those are probably the most you can probably play with, because you don't know what you're going to run into. And so
yeah.
keeping it plain text and not doing code, like, yeah, I get being encoded, but at this point, you're probably transmitting in the open because this guy is dying.
Yep.
And
Or you're
if
on
you're,
a
again,
contingency
the other
frequency.
part of it is, just like you said earlier, you read the rest of the book. If you read
Yeah.
the rest of this book, it will teach you how to not just blast wattage all over the place and tell everybody that you're totally hurting and you're in a bad spot. But if you read the rest of this great book, it will show you that's why this is in here, so that you can understand, hey, this is what this is for. This is the job of the radio, so that I can go and tell everybody, hey, I need some help, man. Can you come and pick up my people so we might be able to preserve our fighting force? That'd be great.
One
So,
of the good things, and I
yeah.
want to bring this up, I was talking to the NVIS group, the Radio Recon NVIS group, and we were chit chatting on a thing, and I brought up the book, the FM 24-18, which is a radio book from the 1965 feature. And one of the guys pulled up the book and was reading it online because it's free online, or you can buy a copy. I personally have a paper copy of just about everything because this book isn't going to help you listening to us talk about it when you have to train other people and learn it. And one of the good things I like about the old 1960s, 50s era manuals is they wrote it to be simple and understandable. And that's exactly what Scout did with this book. But on that point, he says in the manual that I was talking about, it says it must be assumed that interception occurs every time a transmitter is placed in operation. Also, I'm going to add to it, assume everybody can read your conversations, even if you have them encrypted. That was a failure of the Germans on a routine basis where they're like, oh, our Enigma machine works so good. And in this book, they talk about doing this in a digital format through a tablet and stuff like that. And maybe that's the way you need to communicate because voice isn't smart and maybe you do a plain text burst transmission in a certain format that will take the enemy time to find out, hey, you really did get screwed up on that ambush, and we need to send our QRF to mess up the guerrilla forces because we know they're messed up and they're going to be in place for a while. And oh, by the way, they gave the location they need to pick up. So yeah,
Yeah, and that's where it gets weird, and that's where we, as you know as well, we've all been talking about this, at least on the medical side, of like, hey, like, without totally screwing up this and reinventing the wheel, is there other ways that we might be able to put this information out? And like you said, burst transmission, that kind of seems like where I've at least leaned to is if you can type this out at just the first 5 lines. Again, 5 to fly is the saying. You need the first 5 to fly. So if you can give me the first 5 and then burst me the 6 to 9 en route, bro, we're making money. Because at that point, I can read it. And then I don't have to ask you, hey, can you repeat that? I didn't hear you. Oh, hey, like, did you say you wanted extrication equipment? Or did you
what
say
smoke
you
color
needed...
is that again?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
oh, did you see ventilator? Just crap like that.
Yeah.
And where repeating yourself in voice may not be a good idea, burst transmission might be worth it.
Yep. It may be easier. The documentation's there at the receiving end. There is, and this comes back to, I hate to say historians class again. We discussed this in historians class in ad nauseum on what digital communications are best for reliability and transmission and everything else. And to be fair, I have failed in my knowledge queue on that to keep up with all that stuff because I used to have a whole bunch of tabs open that explain which digital mode is fast, which one is redundant and protects your message and stuff like that too. But yeah. So you got line 8 here too, right?
Yep. So we're gonna finish up. So line 8 is patient. What is your technically?
Who's your patient?
So ultimately it's who your patient is. So it's patient, nationality, and status. And so I like the way that I like how he did line 8. So he's got your combatants, allied civilians, friendly or allied armed group members, unaligned civilians, neutral, or enemy wounded. So, because you might run into that. You might, oh, hey, like, I need to grab this enemy guy, and we screwed him up, and now we need to keep him alive for whatever reason, right? So the reason why you give that is I might grab, like, if I hear that it's an enemy wounded, I'm probably going to grab an extra security guy we're going to grab an extra security guy, maybe from your team, or maybe it's nice to know.
Bring an extra hand with somebody who's got a pistol. Like, we expect you cleared everything out, but maybe you didn't. Maybe he's got
just to make sure nothing goes totally haywire. Now, I say that with the aspect that, maybe that might be something that, oh, hey, this is relayed en route. Maybe that is something that you send earlier so that I know, oh, hey, Joe Blow, you're coming with me. Like, maybe. I don't know. Again, for conventional military, it usually was U.S. forces, U.S. civilian, non-U.S. civilian, non-U.S. military, or non-U.S. and or EPW, enemy prisoner of war. So that's how they align, but I do like the way that he put it because it makes most sense for this. This has been adapted for this, and I like that. So
that's where the 9 line turns into an 8 line in a guerrilla warfare book. And you
just
talking
to kind
about
of go ahead. So line 9. Line 9 is NBC contamination, nuclear, biological, chemical. So obviously, that's not something that we're going to be able to do anything with.
Nope.
I don't know if it's really all that applicable. Maybe you can change line 9 to something, or maybe just strike it. Usually, even in training, we would just strike line 9. Even for giving a real one, you'd strike line 9 because it's like, okay, well,
why waste the time putting that in? And unless you have a formatted sheet, I could see biowarfare or chemical warfare actually being a legit thing to communicate about. In so speaking, that you could bring in, okay, so the riots that are going on right now, I'm I guarantee you that 9-line is being used in that format by Antifa if they have any care movement up,
Oh,
because some of
100%.
those people are
I've
getting
seen the
maced.
guys in Philly. I've
Yeah.
seen documentation. They are using the 9-line straight out of the book, and
Yep.
their little medic people are running around with the little cards, and they are using this.
Yep. Some
So,
chemical and biological could be
yeah,
played with,
it,
but if you're in a
I,
conventional format, drop it. No, if you don't tell me there's a chemical warfare apparatus to this thing, and I can see like, hey, we got maced by a whole bunch of like one of Dolio's big pushes is like securing an area, protecting your community, and I could see, hey, we've got a whole bunch of people who are, let's see here, let's go down the list. We've got 4 routines, which is non-life threatening. Special equipment might be Dawn dish soap, and number of patients, well, 3 or 4, because they didn't have their gas mask on properly, and they sprayed bear mace at a whole bunch of rioting people who want food. You don't want to shoot these people. You have something that a chemical irritant. They've run away to deal with their own problems, and maybe it's just like, hey, I need you to come out and treat a couple guys who were not masked up properly. Or there
yeah,
could be bayonet stabbings, knowing
yeah. Keeping on that topic, you could totally
enemy
be like,
combatant
so, and this is where
with
I
a
could
chemical
see
irritant.
this. It did get thrown around that you use line 9 as other.
Yeah.
And that would be like we were talking about like COVID and stuff, being like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what if this person has crazy infectious disease?
Yeah.
What if this person has, like you said, maybe they got told they got mace, or they got, to be honest, what if they got sprayed by, I would consider, not that this is a health hazard, but if I'm dragging this person into my hospital, do I want somebody who's been like totally sprayed by a skunk head to toe in the hospital?
Well,
Or in
I'll think
my
of another
little
one.
tiny healthcare facility? Maybe
Uh,
not. Now, granted, that may not be something that you'd put on here.
I got a better one for you though. Just so we roll back some, Historian and Scout were talking on the most previous podcast about like some drama that has happened before, and I'll bring up one that may fit into the 9-line. Is somebody covered head to toe in poison ivy? That is something that if they're scratched up, cut up, and covered head to toe poison ivy, that would be a line 9 to me.
Yeah,
That
that's
would be
kind of where I
chemical
feel like it
warfare in
might
nature.
feel. Now, with that said, I might put that under line 4
Okay.
as special equipment. But again, I'll be honest, I don't fully know, because, like, for that, I would like to make sure that I grabbed extra gowns on my
And this
way
is
out.
why, boys and girls, you wear gloves when
Yeah,
you treat
and then
patients.
it is not to protect. The gloves are not to protect them from you. It is to protect you from them. That's what the gloves. That's why it's called PPE.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's something, and it does beg a question, even with you talk about the mace and stuff, because if you're bringing this person to any sort of a field hospital per se,
Yeah.
tent, somebody's house or basement, or what, like talking about the Ukraine conflict, the basement is pretty much where all of their hospitals are.
Yep.
Do you want to drag a maced patient that's still got that, has
It's on their
CS or whatever
clothes,
all
it's
over
on
them?
everything. Yep.
Yeah. And now it's going to get all over your, granted, it's still not active anymore, but at the same time, hey, we might want to make sure that somebody's has like a bucket of water or something,
Yeah,
like
or
something.
some way to dispose of their clothes.
So
Or
at least they
even
don't
maybe
just
a
get
little
chucked
decon.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
decon, there might be some little light decon, and then
CS gas, I
so-
believe, sticks around for a little bit anyways on surfaces. So, like, if you touch it and you can get it in your own eyes and stuff like that, if I remember correctly.
yeah, that was
Can't
the
remember
one.
if it
Yeah, that's what
sticks.
you go to the gas chamber. It stays on your clothes, and it pretty much stays there.
Yeah,
So
but pepper spray is another thing that it doesn't go away just because it's been a few minutes. It may not burn your face off, but
yeah,
let's
kind of
pause this.
recap.
Let me pause this real
recap.
quick.
Say again.
Okay. Yeah, get done with it, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, you'll be. Yeah. So for the most part, we're just going to recap what we got here. And so line 1 is going to be your location. Your line 2 is call sign frequency that they're going to reach you at. Line 3 is your number of patients by precedence or urgency. That's where you get your urgent, priority, routine, and expected patients. And the way that those usually go would be, I think I spoke of it before, was if I had 2 urgent, you could do 2 alpha, or maybe you even say 2 uniform, and that's it. It would just be line 3, 2 uniform. Line 4 is going to be any special equipment you're going to need, and then line 5 is the number of patients in total, which would be your litter or ambulatory patients. That would suffice for the first set of possible information that needs to go before the ambulance or your transport actually leaves. And then you got line 6, which is the security of the pickup site. Line 7 is the method of marking or identifying that pickup site, or CCP, casualty collection point. And then line 8 is going to be your patient status as on their, whether they're your guys or their guys or nobody's guys. So, and then line 9 isn't really applicable with the MBC environment, but maybe somebody gets expired, you think about it, you make it a little bit personalized. You say, oh, hey, this is other. So at least for that.
All right. I think you've covered that pretty well. And sorry, I walked away for a minute too, because I was picking up my thermals, because we're going to have a little chit chat about thermals sooner or later. And some experiences I had. Great group. Armacite's probably one of the best companies I've dealt with. And I'm not going to shade on AGM as well. They've got some really good products too. I had a small issue and it got resolved real well with them.
So
But
it
that's,
is.
yeah, I don't know if I'm going to edit that whole I'm walking away thing. We'll see. So let's continue on. I'm going to go on the clandestine reports. Part of the reason I want to go over this with you and discussing this is some of this is an exercise in what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And why we're doing it. And I think discussing it instead of me just producing the information and being like, oh, this is for this, I think having a conversation about it will make it a little more accessible for people. So let's go on. We're at page 56 right now, clandestine reports. The other report formats pertain to the clandestine role of communications and the method of sending them covered in chapter 6. So read the rest of the damn book. There are certain types of information that must be relayed, and these are sent during the communication windows discussed in Chapter 3. In Afghanistan, we sent these reports to indicate our team's status during long-duration missions, typically conducting patterns of life surveillance or interdicting multiple targets over a broad area. In each case, we had to send and receive our information from our higher echelon that gave us broad direction during our operation. These reports originated with clandestine teams operating behind the Iron Curtain in Europe during the Cold War and in Southeast Asia, and continues to be used today. It is important to note that the names of the reports themselves are meaningless, but included to identify the types of reports being sent to the Tactical Operations Center, TOC. Or TOC for you military people. The reader will notice they are not labeled line 1, 2, etc., but rather AA, BBB, and so on. This has two purposes. So, one, so they are not confused with any other type of report. Two, when encrypted with a trigram, see Chapter 7, are impossible to mistake. And that's super, super important. I'm going to go into this a little bit. The book has been talked about on my podcast, on Scout's podcast previously with Historian. I haven't finished Historian's podcast this time, and I'm pretty sure it was talked about. And if not, it needs to beg repeating. Red November is a massively good book, and it talks about our Cold War interactions with the submarines, specifically the Foxtrot, I believe, that were headed towards Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and how we actually found them, because the technology they had updated their technology to transmit so fast that we no longer heard them, but somebody finally figured out what was going on, and they started to track them, but the burst was so fast they couldn't differentiate the direction. And that's why we were talking about digital communications and burst transmissions and other ways to do that. Also, one of the failings of the Russians were specifically they transmitted at a special hour to make it easier for the talk or the Kremlin to get that transmission. And it allowed the Americans to pinpoint where the hell these people were, which had a massive change in policy, both from the Kremlin and the US at the time. This is extremely important. Do not have a set pattern on anything. I can't stress that enough. It's stressed in the classes, it's stressed in the scout class, it's stressed everywhere. And I'm pretty sure you remember this from dealing with it in the RTO class. And this, when did we have the RTO class? 4 years ago? 5?
True, yeah, almost 5 years ago.
Yeah. Pre-COVID, everything
It's
pre-COVID is
pre-COVID,
20
so it
years
would've
ago.
been
So,
5, 6 years ago,
oh,
actually. It's
yeah,
like
longer than that.
2019. That was crazy.
So let's
Wow,
go on to
holy crap.
You're getting old, sir. Angus report. Let's go with that one. The Angus report is sent to report initial entry of a team into an area. The two most dangerous times on a covert insertion by a team is the entry and exfil from the area of operations. A team finds itself the most exposed with the fewest defendable positions from which to fight. For these reasons, during the infill and exfil, all radios on a team are switched on. Once they have reached their planned area of operation, they will send an Angus report and power down all of their communications equipment to prevent accidental transmission. This is extremely important, again, because submarines were tracked the same way. They had a fixed Angus report. Be careful with this one. This is the one that I want to say is important, but also one that I almost would bypass unless absolutely necessary. But you do still have to tell your people, hey, I got to the area of operation. I'm in my hide site, I'm in my such and such, or I'm near my hide site. You shouldn't transmit dead on the spot you're supposed to be. And that's why they have the Angus report, because you might be, say you've got a 10-mile, imagine 10 miles you're traveling in, you're going by foot. When you hit the 5-mile mark, you're in a danger area, and your end goal is a scouting position, a hide site at mile 10. You may need to transmit in that mile 6 area, which may notify the enemy that you're in the area, but it doesn't tell them that you're quite on the location yet. Or maybe it's mile 8, something like that. So keep that in mind and use that as some knowledge for if you're in charge to help define that, or if you are one of the people going out there to maybe recommend to your higher ups, hey, maybe we shouldn't transmit at our freaking hide site, because I will find you. I have a Kraken. I will hunt you down. I will know where you are, and you will be shit out of luck. And maybe you don't get shot. Maybe we just track you and send our people around, and you never see anything, and all of a sudden you're leading us right back to where you came from. So, Angus, initial entry. That's AAA. That would be your date and time group. Date and time of transmission. So whenever you're transmitting this. Triple B is team status. That's code word identifying the team status. So let's say everything's good. You send out vanilla. You have issues. Maybe it's chocolate and somebody's bleeding to death strawberry. Whatever you want to do. Code names are irrelevant, but like I said, everybody can read your transmission and can decrypt your stuff. So make it harder for them to figure out. That's why we have the Navajo Indians. On my travels with my wife, we saw a whole bunch of Navajo code talker stuff out in New Mexico, Arizona area. It is an important thing. It's an important aspect. And that's why the trigram later in the book is so important. The trigram. Triple C is location. Location is encrypted with the SARNEG. We will get on the SARNEG later probably, or we've already gone over it a little bit. SARNEG is important. There are also other ways to encrypt locations and give out that reference, but you want to give a reference of your last known location. That way, if you've given your Angus report and then you don't retransmit later, we at least have a starting spot of where to look for you. Triple D is deviations. That's any changes that you need to report. Maybe you had enemy forces that were patrolling. Maybe you bypassed them. Maybe there's construction on a road that you were supposed to take or parallel and you decided to go around it. That just gives them information. Hey, it took longer to get here or whatever else. Triple E is additional information, and that just might be points of interest. Maybe you didn't see anyone coming in. You don't tell them anything. Maybe you saw a light patrol coming by, or maybe you saw a lot of fixed wing or rotary wing flying around, and that's something for them to know. So let's give the example of an Angus report. So this is
All right.
AAA 220345 local, October 2022. That's your date, your time, and time zone, month, and year. Triple B, green, team is 100%. So you could also do the green, yellow, red, and black. Maybe you guys got in there and had a hell of a firefight or something like that. Triple C, that's going to be MDIAANEHIR. That's the location encrypted with the current SARNAG. So it's just giving your 10, or this is going to be an eight letter reference. Triple D, took alternate infill route. Planned route had presence of dogs barking. Triple E, village to the immediate west of target has sentries roaming. Boris to follow. Boris follows /ACK acknowledges transmission. In this report, the team has indicated they made it to the planned infiltration site. However, the originally planned route was not usable due to the presence of dogs barking. A village that was not originally planned as part of the observation was spotted with sentries and is now a target of interest. And the team is preparing a Boris report to give a better assessment of the guerrilla commander regarding the situation on the ground. So, any comments on that? We've done that in the scout course.
Yeah, that's definitely
That's a standard.
Yeah, and then this is just a status report. So really, an entry status report saying, "Hey, look, like things went to plan, things didn't go to plan, but we're still good and continue mission." Now, granted, we didn't do a lot of this. Was not stuff that we did, and that's where I learned it was a scout course.
Yeah.
So it is good to update because, like I said, I haven't, other than reading this book a little while ago, I haven't seen that in a while. So just remembering, keeping it fresh, kind of keep it fresh.
Yeah. And this is something you have to look at too, because a lot of video games don't have I know a lot of people play video games, and the reason why I bring that up is because, like Scout says, you can't just train this stuff out specifically all the time, and people want to use video games to do this. Well, here's one of the downsides to training via video game. You'll never do an Angus report, because an Angus report means that you've traveled via vehicle or some other way 30, 40 miles to get in, or maybe you hiked 10 miles in. Most of these video games are not very big. Arma's probably one of the best ones. They have like kilometers of terrain, but most people don't want to sit there and play a video game for 8
Travel
hours
simulator.
driving. Yeah.
Well,
They don't want
but in
travel simulator.
reality, that's exactly Call of Duty. Okay, well, mission starts. Oh, I'm here.
Now,
That's your Angus report. Like you got there.
yeah.
You know, like now I can think of one good Call of Duty mission that you probably can do an English mission on, which would, well, I guess it wouldn't be. I was thinking of that from the first Modern Warfare where you're like, gosh, I can't remember what it is. Either way, it doesn't matter. But
this is important
that's
stuff,
something
though.
that you can't, you technically could if you really wanted to be, but like, oh, hey, like I'm taking a trip. Okay, well, a trip. Did you have to deviate your course due to traffic or an accident? Something like that? Technically, you can write, hey, you're driving down to the scout course. You hit traffic. Well, you had to have a slight deviation. Well, then at least, the only reason I would say that is so you see it more often. You see it more often, you get used to seeing it, and it becomes, and actually, that would be applicable to all of these reports, is something that you see not enough that you can actually maybe not have it fully memorized, but man, I can write you an English report, and I got it prepped, and we can do one real quick just to make sure that, I'm good. I still got all
the brain cells firing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
all that.
exactly.
Well, here's another side to it too. I talk to a lot of guys out in Arkansas. There's an Arkansas prep group out there that I routinely communicate with because some of my friends are involved with them. One of the things that they like to do when they get the chance is actually meet up. Instead of just driving to location, go hike or go out to the range, because these guys are not all in one town. They're regional at best. It may be smart to do an Angus report. Hey guys, before you leave, I want you to get here. You don't have to transmit it on the radio, but do an Angus report on the way. Maybe you stop to get gas, fill out your Angus report real quick. And that'll lead us on to the Boris, because he's talking about the Boris. Now, this is why I'm big into, hey, I get video games, and I know scouts like it. They're a time sink, shit preferred use of your time. I agree with him 100% on that, and why he's saying that, because so many of us don't go outside and actually do stuff. That's why you see Geocoms and Wisco Mando, they're actually out there training and doing stuff, but I bet you they've never done an Angus report going to the competition. And maybe I'll harass them and be like, hey, post an Angus report or something similar to that, so we can read it and just see it in person. Maybe the next time I go up to the G camp, I'll do one too, because that's a known unknown location, so to speak. So let's go on to the Boris report. The Boris report is more in-depth intelligence report that relays long-term observation analysis from the team on the ground. It is more broad in nature than what a salute or SALT report contains. The two aforementioned reports are used for nearly immediate action. So if you're under fire, you're giving a salute report to people in hire. The Boris report is used for long-term assessments to coordinate actions among groups over a larger area than what a salute report typically covers. And just pause there. We're on page 58, bottom of page 58. We're going to switch over to 59 in a second to go through this in the spiral bound. The Boris report is your intel report. So you're going out and you've got a hide site, you're checking out stuff, and you can do this. I had a guy do a Boris report, but he did a different one. He did a salute report, and it should have been technically a Boris report in the group. And he went out and set up a hide on private property near an intersection of a road, and he did a salute report on the coming and goings and brought it back. This would be a better Boris setup. So Boris intelligence report. AAA, your date and your time group. Triple B, date and time of observed activity. So your first one's like, this is right now while you're listening. And then the triple B is, this is what happened a little while ago that I observed. Triple C is location observed activity. So if you're sitting up on a mountainside looking down and you might observe things in different regions, they were at that location. Triple D is observed activity. It could be anything from some goats being defiled by Mujahideen to a convoy driving down the road. Triple E, description of personnel, equipment, vehicles, and weapons. This is where the salute part of the thing would come into play, but we're not doing a salute report, and these reports are not to be done immediately like a salute report. These are supposed to be done at a certain time that you've pre-prescribed, just like your Angus report isn't something that you do at a set time. So say your transmission window is 04 to 010, 410 a.m. local. The guy on the receiving end is waiting for this Boris report, and maybe you have a stack of information. It may be more than one Boris report specifically. So you may have seen some actions in a 12-hour interval, and group of people on a convoy. You saw an evac go down at a certain location, that kind of stuff. So let's do the example real quick. AAA is 220345 local October 2022. Triple B is 220315 local October 2022. Triple C is MDIANGEHFA, and that is the encryption with your SARNEG of the location. Triple D, 7 armed sentries, 6 in static positions, 1 roaming. Triple E, brown camo pants, black shirts, brown plate carriers, unidentified patches, PVS-14 nods, 1 Toyota truck, painted M4s with ACOG and IR lasers. Triple F, team appears professionally trained and disciplined, unaware to our presence, likely expecting contact from unknown enemy, will continue observations. Leader's assessment, attempt should be made in the future to make friendly contact with this group. Nothing follows /ACK, which is acknowledge. So you might be out there, you might see some people moving around the woods. They may not be a threat to you or an unknown. Maybe you need to contact them. And I love how Scout put this in here, because not everybody's a threat. You shouldn't be doing a salute report. Maybe you're just observing the area. Maybe there's a group of farmers out there that are doing their own patrols, their own security stuff that you've never met before, because I know some guys in Arkansas that are going to be setting up their own individual communities out there, or they may coalesce in a more major community if things went tits up. And I think that's important. We did this Boris report in the scout, or maybe it was the recce course. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was the recce that we did that, talking about, I think, going on to the airport and
Yep.
having to send up the updated report of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
And I'm going to try to blow through the rest of it. I think these two are the critical things because a lot of guerrilla warfare is observation to other strategic assets or players that may have regular forces instead of irregular forces that can actually do the conflict. Submarines are a good example. I love bringing these things up because, like, a lot of it, yeah, they're out there to shoot merchant ships, and that doesn't mean you're not going out there to hit or not going to hit a convoy. But the reality is maybe your irregular force does that, but they're also doing the observations for a actual line infantry, a unit, or something like that. Hell, you could think of it as how many units were in Russia to set up all those drone attacks on their strategic assets, air assets for the nuclear bombers. There was probably some Boris reports on that specifically for that operation in so many words. And this doesn't have to be done on a radio. Some of this stuff gets done on the Nintendo Wii. It's been caught several times because nobody tracks that stuff down. They just don't have the bandwidth to catch all this stuff. And how hard is it for you to go in, log in at a gamer's place and play a video game, and by the way, send a message to somebody that is only read, not replied to?
We've seen. Yeah.
Common practice. You got to think out of the box. This is radio stuff, but the reality is this book is more than just radio stuff. This is a lifestyle in situations where you can't possibly understand right now as an American because you've not lived through a shithole world. And God forbid, I hope none of this comes to pass. I hope God prevents all this stuff and we never have these issues. I am not going to plan for that. I'm going to plan for the worst case scenario because God puts in those difficulties for you to deal with as well. And sometimes you're going to be tested, and there's probably a lot of testing going on right now for a lot of us out there in both directions. So let's continue on. We're at the bottom of page 59. In this example Boris report, following the previous Angus report, the team described in detail their observation and includes a professional assessment. Since the element they have observed seems well trained and equipped, but not as of yet hostile, the leader's assessment is an attempt to make a friendly contact in the future, like we discussed. Let's go on to the Cyril report, CYRIL report. I hope I'm saying that right. The Cyril report is a team status report and is sent at the beginning of each comma window, both from the team in the field and from the TOC as an update for their own situational awareness. So, Cyril report, situation or status report, AAA, date, time, group, triple B, current location, triple C, medical status, triple D, equipment status, triple E, supply status, batteries and water, food, triple F, team activity since last camo report, triple G, team activity until next camo window, triple H, remarks. And we're going to go over the example real quick. Triple A is 22-15-45 local, October 22. Triple B, MDIAAN, your Sarneg. Triple C, green, so that means medical, everybody's okay. Triple D is equipment status, green. So all your ammo, you haven't been shooting anybody. Triple E, 7 batteries at full charge, no rounds fired, /100%, 5-gallon water, 12 MREs. Triple F, buddy team observed target, nothing of interest noted. Observed 7-man team pulling security, group initiated stand down and reduced security posture to 3 sentries. Weather prevented launching of surveillance drone. And 2022, talking about surveillance drones before the war kicked off in Ukraine. Triple G, team will initiate sleep plan in hindsight. Rotate buddy teams in observation roles. If wind subsides, team anticipates launching a surveillance drone. Triple H. Target village appears empty / will continue observing adjacent village but requesting early mission completion. Nothing follows / ACL. As noted, the serial report is a detailed status of the team's activities to give to the guerrilla commander a current status of his team in the field, coupled with what their plans until the next combo window will entail. The team indicated exactly how many batteries, how much ammunition, and how much food and water remain. These would normally be sent as a code word to further obscure the meaning, as we brought up. You got any comments on that one?
No,
Pretty
no,
straightforward.
yeah, these are, like I said, this, each
It's
report
straightforward,
has
but
their point, and it's all about being concise and being able to get, and it's concise and efficient, because you want, again, we go back to what we were talking about. Oh, hey, do you do these as burst transmissions? Do you do it in voice? You have a handful of, as we've learned, there's many ways to skin this cat. So ultimately, having these reports, this is a one-stop shop for this information. Be like, oh, hey, I showed up. Just want to make sure that you guys are still good. Cool. Awesome. And it gives, receiving these reports, imagine, also give a level of morale back to your team as well.
It gives your intel guys time to work on stuff. If you are defending in a location and you push out, maybe you're not worried about the town over, or maybe you are worried about the town over, but not in a negative way, but maybe they're just a bunch of civilians, enemy op force flying around, and all of a sudden you just found out that town is, village, town, whatever you want to call it, is empty, and you saw some people patrolling. Did those guys displace to another town? Or did they get attacked, or did they see something else coming that you didn't? And that's important stuff. So we're going to go on to the crack report now. Crack is used to assess battlefield damage to infrastructure, but also has the purpose of identifying whether or not a facility of interest can support the needs of a team on the ground. Traditionally, crack has been used by forward surveillance teams to assess the conditions of bridges and roads for follow-on forces during an offensive. We used crack to identify potential safe houses and assess whether or not they'd be suitable for the purposes, as well as identifying what other resources we'd need to request for extended operations out to them. In Afghanistan, we used crack to first identify the location of a potential Afghan border police safe house we'd be using as a staging point for operations along the Pakistani border, then request the assets to improve its capabilities to best suit our needs, as well as other considerations. On our first survey, we know the area's natural defenses and how to improve them. Then the sanitation considerations, followed by topographic of the area and how it would be suited to signals intelligence collection against the Taliban VHF signals coming just over the border. All of this was built out on a rather large mud hut serving as a transient corral for sheep herders on their way to the Kandahar stockyards. For the potential guerrilla band, it can work the exact same in identifying places that can suit its group's needs. And I'll go through this and then we'll have a quick debrief on this one.
Yeah.
Crack, battle damage assessment, AAA, date and time group. Should be used to that one by now. It's on the top of every one of them. Triple B, type of target. Triple C, description of target, physical and functional damage. Triple D, BDA analysis / resource requirements. Example of a crack report. Triple A, 220345, local, 23 October 2022. Triple B, metal enclosed structure. Triple C, large roll-up garage door. Hole in northwest side of roof. No structural damage node. Triple D, building suits needs of team's requirements for a temporary safe house. The crack report is noting a possible temporary safe house inside an occupied metal building, also pointing out the damage to the structure while noting its damage poses no threat to the team's requirements. And I was a big urban explorer, and this is probably one of the things that you suburban / urban people may want to look into, is the crack report. You can do these things anytime, anywhere. You can assess a crack house. You can assess the damage to the crack house, which also might be of interest in humor too. But these are also part of an area study. We've talked about the area intelligence handbook by, I think it's Mike Shelby, and this is where you can do some of that work. And it doesn't have to be, hey, BDA, a battle damage assessment of an area. Maybe you are attacking a place. Maybe artillery was sent out and blew stuff up, and that's important to you too. But it might be, hey, I need a location to keep supplies for a follow-on operation and a small team to guard it. Where do we put them? Where do we hide them? Maybe you find a location out in the woods. Maybe it's an old house. It's not too bad off. There's some holes in the roof. Bring some ponchos. It's going to be a little cold, but it still works.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think that's
Yeah,
I think it's a good one.
Yeah, it kind of touches that. Something I meant to add earlier was, when we were talking about locations and stuff and talking about, you can technically, I was thinking about using you use these reports to say, okay, hey, that's going to be my CCP. That's my location. That can go into now your medevac and say, oh, hey, like maybe I stashed these guys here. Stuff like that. So because that's exactly what this is. It's a gathering of intelligence. It's a gathering of information, and intelligence and information is what you're looking for. That's what you're sending guys out for, is to find most of this stuff.
Yep. And maybe you do that Angus report to, hey, I infilled, but on the way in, I've got a crack report to follows. because I found a great building that nobody's around that's hidden over here, and be a great spot to have a stop, have a resupply, have a medevac. Hey, you can get your truck here. We should be able to pick people up from this location. It's in a little hostile area, but we're going to return any wounded to this location. And this is where it is. This is what it is. This is why we chose it. A lot of information's right there. And you can dig deeper into this.
Yeah, and I guess that would be your
Be
intel
conscious.
analysts would take this and be like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, this is
We could use it, or
follow-on
you might
questions
use it.
and stuff, or follow-on
Mhm.
teams that actually go and can say, hey, use it. And that's what it is for, is to guide on further information and or resource gathering, as well as
Yep.
missions, follow-on, stuff like that.
And I'm going to have to bring this up to one of the guys we talked to earlier. One of the guys we did the interview, and he's teaching courses on recon and stuff like that. Because I think the next one is the under report, which is interesting because former Green Beret, he does some really cool classes up in North Carolina. And as soon as I have a new job that actually pays money again, I will definitely be hitting his classes up. But we talked in that interview about getting rolled over, like them doing reconnaissance, and like what if the enemy rolls over top of them and stuff like that. Well, here's another one called an under report. And this is an interesting one because preppers in general talk about this kind of thing a lot, and we never think about how we're going to deal with these. And these could be incoming, like, hey, I've got a cache somewhere, and that's what we're talking about. A cache report is basically, it's underground kind of thing. It may not be underground, but it might be hidden somewhere. And this could be transmitted to you. Hey, there's somebody else, another team comes out and drops this stuff off. If you know anything about intelligence people working in foreign countries, they'll have a team come in, very legal, through the border, and they're doing intelligence gathering. If they need any technology, somebody else is smuggling in. There's another chain that drops it off somewhere. They don't carry all their secret spy gear across the border. It's too easy to get caught up in a routine observation. And the same thing goes for this guerrilla warfare. The Taliban did this all the time. Go put stuff in a stash. We're going to go out there. We have no guns on us. We travel to a location. We pick up our guns. We shoot at the Americans. Then we disperse back, dump our guns in another location, or maybe the same location, and we disperse the civilians. That's what these under reports are for. So, continuing on page 63, under report. Last clandestine report of note is under, or cache report. While living out of a rucksack is part and parcel of the lifestyle of a guerrilla fighter, we can't carry much, relatively speaking, on our backs for an extended period of time. This is very true. Side point, I wrote an article on it, on how much weight you should be carrying. The older you get, it's going to be harder. stay in shape like anti-pattern's doing. But continuing on, the lighter the better, at least when traveling even short distances but over rough terrain. That said, life for a guerrilla is very different than that of counter guerrilla or an occupation force. One can afford to be overt, the other cannot. We carried all of our gear we expected to use, including water, into the area of operations for extended periods of time. This becomes a finite supply line and a fairly high signature one at that. The guerrilla, reliant as much on blending into a populace as he is with his terrain, can't always have the luxury of a ruck in the open. Instead, reliant almost solely on caches emplaced by the local support network. Historical accounts are filled with guerrilla movements relying primarily on these, from the Spanish Civil War to Nazi-occupied France to clandestine activities run by every spy agency on Earth. And in each case, there was a distinct method to marking and reporting the location of these caches. The way we do this is the under report. Now let's go through the under report real quick. Under, which is a cache report. AAA, date, time group. Again, you've heard that. Triple B, type. Triple C, contents. Triple D, location. Triple E, depth. Triple F, additional info / reference points. You may be transmitting this out because you had to cache your gear and leave it, or you may be getting this sent to you. But we'll do the example real quick. Example under report. AAA 220345 local, October 2022. Triple B PVC clean out tube. So that's a big PVC pipe with 2 end caps generally, screw on, and probably sealed up with some plumber's putty or whatever the hell they call it, that blue-purple stuff. Triple C, 210 rounds of ammunition, 7 mags, AA batteries, 3 radio batteries. Triple D, MDERIRA, and again, we're going to the Sarnay location. Info. So Triple E, surface laid / old tractor gas tank. So it's somewhere on the surface laid near an old tractor gas tank. Triple F, marked with white reflective tape 3 inches long on side of gas tank facing road. So you're driving down the road, you see a little glint. Maybe it's a fuel tank. Farmers love to have fuel tanks out there. They also like to put sediment in the bottom for people who like to thief their diesel and screw up your motor. Just heads up, a lot of tractors out there. This is for your guerrilla operations and stuff like that. A lot of you rural guys, you know what to put in there that they'll try to suck fuel out of and screw up their motors. I know about this because a friend went and stole gas and screwed up a whole 2500 engine. This underreport is marking a combat resupply for a team, sealing up a combat load of ammunition. AA batteries for night vision and spare radio batteries for an extended operation. It is not buried, but hidden inside the gas tank of a broken down tractor on the side of the road and marked with a strip of reflector tape. So if you got a couple pieces of old farm equipment out there, somebody knows, hey, go in there and dig in that thing. Guidelines for the formats. The report formats contained here are a guideline. Nothing more, nothing less. If for no other reason, they give a glimpse into the way it is done in the world of clandestine activities and is by no means an absolute end-all be-all. It is, however, a logical process by which Western conventional and special operations forces have worked over a long period of time, condensing the institutional wisdom into refined product. How your group utilizes the wisdom contained is up to you, but keep in mind it must satisfy the end goal of handing off the clandestine information in a concise manner. Your life and the success of your movement depends upon it. And I think you got anything to say about the underreports?
No, it definitely is something that, like, I wanted to remember if there was another one because I don't know if this is specifically under haste, but we were talking about using these for like medical equipment and stuff like that, because we were talking about, you can't some of this stuff just requires too much infrastructure for you to just
Yeah.
carry it on your back. It's just not, even as a small medical team.
You
And
can't carry 80 tons of medical equipment out there. You're not going to be able to carry all the. One of the things I've been thinking about quite a bit is that sodium hypochlorite maker that I have from H2Go,
yeah,
and the absolute necessity for bleach just to keep things clean. I need to talk to you, and I know Teddy listens to this, and Teddy, I'm sorry. You produce them so fast, I can't keep up with you, and I don't think anyone else can, but
I
I'm
keep my list.
trying to
I keep
catch
just
up, and then,
checking what's going on because I just put them on, just listen to them.
yeah, he's got so much good information. And then Scout produces one, and then I better keep up with Scout because he'll do the same thing. He'll dump 10 in a month, and I'm like, I can't keep up with the modern news and all the other stuff. But I do need to talk to him about like bleach production and stuff like that. Things that you can do with salt to make cleaning agents. You can't carry big buckets of bleach around easily. And that's one of the nice things to clean an area, sanitize an area before you have to deal with medical stuff, or even just clean up and keep it sanitary. But maybe you have a production of this somewhere else and you cache that stuff and it lasts only so long. But yeah, stuff like that. Something to think about.
Oh yeah, I just like a Mechmatic happy we talk about that. You know, everybody, yeah, this, that's good. It's there. Figure out.
I can't tell if that's
Is
you
it
or
me?
me breaking up, but
Little
yeah, a
broken?
little bit. You're
No,
breaking in and out.
trying to make
Yeah.
a solution. But yeah, it definitely is, and hopefully we're trying to put a class together that has to do with stuff like that. Yeah, it's just having these reports and making sure that they're concise. It does means a lot. Now, granted, I would have stuff for medical. That was my bread and butter. But
Yeah.
they're all this.
This could be anything.
Yeah,
This could be
yeah.
food supplies. This could be ammunition. This could be a set of binoculars out there. And we forget that during World War II, ham radio was banned because they didn't want spies transmitting stuff out of the United States. And it almost stayed banned, and it took the ARRL. I'm going to call them the Not FUD NRA because it was brought up in the podcast. They're the Not FUD NRA for the ham radio establishment. They're still a little fuddy, in my opinion, on things because they kind of let things
They've
go
just turned into their
that
own.
I wish they had
Turned
fought
into
against.
their own worst enemy over the years. They've turned into what they
Yeah.
said they were trying to get against.
Yeah.
But either way.
So, but I think we're going to end that here. We've gotten all the way to the end of this chapter, page 65. And the next one's going to be a crash course in infield antennas. And if I can, I'm going to try to get Historian back on for that and maybe some other stuff too. Or maybe I'll just sit down here with a Rabbit and we'll discuss that out. But page 67 or 66 is intentionally left blank so you can scribble some of your own craziness and maybe make your own reports or put some notes down. One of the key failures in a lot of us is not understanding the stuff we're working on, and that's part of the reason why I do the podcast. If I can tell you about the subject, I understand the subject. If I can't tell it to you and I can't dumb it down so a child or a grandmother can understand it, I don't understand the subject well enough. And hopefully, like, this book is part and parcel exactly why he is an expert in this field and why so many other groups and organizations have failed to put a book out this good is because they didn't think that way. This book I can hand to an idiot, and if they read it, they'll understand enough to be able to do comms and not get you murdered. I think this is probably one of the more important things, and thanks to Rabbit for being here for the 9 line. We actually had a great conversation about it, and it doesn't get brought up enough except for in medical circles, and that's why I wanted him here and why I held off the previous podcast that will be going out, and then this one will probably be going out a day or two apart. because of that. So thank you so much for being here, sir. And we will definitely be doing another podcast very soon, probably talking about your experience at TCCC. You got anything else left to say? All right. And if you guys are heard him broken up, I think he said, no, that's good. One of the things you'll find out is an RTO, you learn what people are saying through broken stuff. And play on your radios, gentlemen. Read this book. Don't be a loot drop and keep your shovel sharp. Have a good night.